You know, uh, usually when we talk about the foundation of the modern world, we sort of immediately think of concrete and steel.
Right. Yeah, the physical stuff.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
you look at a skyscraper and it makes complete sense. You see the massive steel beams, you see the structural grid, but the digital world, for the last 50 years, the entire foundation of our digital lives, I mean, literally everything from your banking app to social media has been built on sand.
Well, silicon, technically,
Right.
which, yeah, is purified from sand.
Right, right.
And, I mean, it is the defining material of our era. Silicon is what allowed us to, you know, shrink a room-sized mainframe down to a desktop computer and then eventually put a supercomputer in everyone's pocket.
Yeah, we've ridden that wave for half a century.
We really have.
But what happens with that bedrock literally runs out of room? Because that is exactly what we're looking at today. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, we are looking at a fundamental shift in the very material that powers our tech.
It's a huge pivot.
It really is. The titans of the industry have finally hit a physical wall with traditional silicon microchips, and they found a surprisingly transparent solution. Glass.
Yeah, glass, which sounds crazy at first.
Right. And to decode what analysts are now calling the glass substrate battle, we have a really unique pair of sources today. First, we're looking at a highly circulated, super fast-paced industry breakdown from a tech and crypto analyst who goes by the name New Stock God, Serenity, over on Binance Square.
Yeah, Serenity gives us this great bird's eye view of the market.
Exactly. And we are pairing that wide view with something much more grounded. We're getting right down into the absolute trenches of manufacturing with the incredibly detailed 2025 annual report of a German high-tech mechanical engineering company called LPKF Laser and Electronics SE.
It's a really fascinating juxtaposition, honestly. You have this rapid-fire speculation of who is going to win the next era of artificial intelligence, paired with the gritty, real-world reality of the company trying to build the literal tools to make that era possible. I mean, our mission today is to decode this glass substrate battle, figure out why glass is replacing silicon, and analyze how these tool makers are navigating a pretty bumpy global economy. We are looking at a massive tectonic pivot in global manufacturing that is playing out almost entirely behind the scenes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because why are we even talking about glass in the first place? I think everyone listening has probably heard of Moore's Law, right?
Yeah, the idea that computing power doubles roughly every 2 years.
Right, because we just keep making transistors smaller and smaller. But according to the LPKF report, Moore's Law is basically losing its validity. Traditional approaches just aren't enough for next-generation computing and these massive data-hungry AI applications.
Yeah, because the physics of silicon can only take us so far. I mean, we are now manufacturing transistors that are just a few nanometers wide.
Which is incredibly tiny.
It's almost hard to comprehend. To put it in perspective, a strand of human hair is about 80 to 100,000 nanometers thick.
Oh, wow.
Right. And we are building microscopic gates that are literally only a few atoms across. And when you get that small, the laws of physics start to work against you. You run into this phenomenon called quantum tunneling.
Wait, quantum tunneling? That sounds like sci-fi.
It does, but it's a real problem. The walls holding the electrons get so incredibly thin that the electrons just they teleport right through them.
Just bypass the wall completely.
Exactly. The chip leaks power, it generates massive amounts of heat, and it causes all this electrical interference. You physically cannot just keep shrinking a flat, single piece of silicon indefinitely.
So, if I can use an analogy here, if a microchip is like a sprawling city, we've essentially run out of land to build outwards. Like we could just keep adding more suburbs to this flat silicon landscape.
That's a perfect way to look at it. We have to build upwards. The industry is pivoting to this new frontier called advanced packaging. So instead of trying to manufacture one giant, flat, highly flawed, monolithic chip, they're using 3D architectures. They take the processor, break it down into much smaller, specialized, perfect little pieces called chiplets, and then stack them on top of each other. But to stack them, you need a foundation.
An interposer, right?
Yeah, an interposer or carrier material to connect all these pieces together.
And this is where the glass comes in. Glass is this new, super strong foundation that allows us to start building out and start building massive 3D skyscrapers of computing power.
Precisely, because glass is structurally far more rigid than the organic resins and the silicon substrates we were using previously.
Why does rigidity matter so much?
Well, when you pack all these chiplets together in a 3D tower, they generate immense heat. Organic materials can warp or shrink under those thermal changes, and if they warp, that breaks the microscopic connection.
Oh, which ruins the whole chip.
Exactly. But glass remains incredibly stable. Furthermore, glass is phenomenally flat, which is crucial when you're trying to align connections that are fractions of a micrometer in size. Plus, it has superior electrical insulation properties.
So it basically lets these massive chiplet skyscrapers communicate with each other incredibly fast with way less signal loss.
You got it.
And looking at the timeline race that Serenity outlines, this transition isn't some distant science fiction concept. Like, it is a full-on sprint, and the dates are right around the corner.
Oh, absolutely.
Serenity notes that SKC's subsidiary, a company called Absolix, is partnering with Yankai, and they're expected to start mass production of glass substrates in the second half of 2026.
Which is very soon.
Yeah. And their marquee client for this is AMD.
Right, and right on their heels, you have Samsung Electromechanics teaming up with Sumitomo Chemical, and they're targeting the second half of 2027. They are reportedly aiming to supply absolute heavyweights like Apple, Broadcom, and major cloud service providers.
And then there's Intel. Intel is claiming they'll hit their mass production stride with glass by 2030, though Serenity's analysis notes that their timeline is looking a bit uncertain given some of their recent internal struggles.
Yeah, Intel's roadmap has had some hiccups.
For sure. And then there's TSMC, which is just the absolute behemoth in global chip manufacturing. Serenity notes that their specific 3D packaging technology, which they refer to as COPOS, short for chip-on-package on substrate that still needs 2 to 3 years of validation.
And that is a crucial detail for the whole supply chain. COPOS is essentially TSMC's proprietary method for stacking these complex logic chips alongside high-bandwidth memory.
Right.
And because TSMC is taking a very deliberate, measured approach to validating their glass substrate process for this stacking, it creates a really fascinating market dynamic.
Like it leaves a window open for others.
Exactly. It leaves a window of opportunity open. Serenity points out that specialized suppliers like Innolux stand to gain significantly from TSMC's specific route, making them a key beneficiary to watch. On the flip side, there are companies like SHMD who theoretically should benefit from TSMC's direction, but Serenity bluntly labels their current financials as, quote, quite terrible.
Ouch. Yeah, quite terrible is not what you want to hear from an analyst.
No,
Not at all.
not.
But, you know, an AMD or an Apple chip doesn't just spontaneously appear perfectly stacked on glass. Someone has to actually build the massive, highly complex machines that can process that glass on a microscopic level.
Right, the physical tools.
Exactly. Serenity explicitly advises keeping a close eye on upstream equipment suppliers because those are the players positioned to profit heavily during the initial infrastructure ramp-up. And that brings us directly to LPKF's 2025 annual report. They are essentially selling the pickaxes for this new technological gold rush.
They are. Because to build your glass skyscrapers, you need highly specialized construction equipment. Processing glass for semiconductors is notoriously difficult. I mean, glass is brittle, it cracks, it splinters.
Right, anyone who has dropped a phone knows that.
Exactly. And if you try to mechanically drill a microscopic hole through it or even hit it with the standard industrial laser, you create microfractures. Those tiny fractures might be totally invisible to the naked eye, but when you run electricity and heat through the chip later...
The glass expands and shatters.
Yes. Those fractures expand, the glass shatters, and the whole chip is ruined.
Which is what makes LPKF's patented technology, LIDE, sound almost like magic. It stands for Laser-Induced Deep Etching. How are they actually getting around the shattering problem? Like, what are they doing differently?
It is a brilliant two-step mechanism. So instead of using a laser to blast a hole through the glass, which is what causes the thermal shock, and the microcracking, the LID technology, uses ultra-short laser pulses to simply alter the internal chemical structure of the glass at extremely precise points.
Wait, so they aren't cutting it?
No, not initially. It modifies the morphology of the material without removing it. Then the entire glass substrate is submerged in a chemical etching bath. The acid only reacts with and washes away the exact areas that were modified by the laser.
Oh, wow. So they are essentially like softening the exact shape they want to cut and then melting it away flawlessly?
Exactly. It results in defect-free, high-precision microscopic holes, which the industry calls vias and cuts without a single micro crack. And according to LPKF's annual report, the majority of the relevant players in the semiconductor industry are already actively using this LIT tech in their development and qualification phases.
So they're positioning themselves as an absolute gatekeeper for the next generation of computing.
You really are.
But they aren't stopping at just the structural foundation. The report details how LPKF is expanding into this forward-looking application called CPO, or co-packaged optics. And here's where it gets really interesting. With CPO, they're integrating optical components directly into the chip housing. The glass substrate itself actually acts as a waveguide to shape beams of light.
Yeah, they're fundamentally changing how data travels. Artificial intelligence models require moving unfathomable amounts of data back and forth between processors and memory, like instantaneously. Currently, we push electrons through tiny copper wires to move that data, but pushing electrons through copper generates friction, which means heat, and it consumes massive amounts of power. It's like trying to force a million cars through a massive congested traffic jam.
And with co-packaged optics, they're essentially replacing that copper traffic jam with a hyperloop. Like, they are literally shooting data through optical links lasers inside microscopic highways etched directly into the glass.
Photons instead of electrons. Light instead of electricity. It drastically increases the bandwidth and speed while simultaneously slashing the power consumption and heat generation. I mean, it is the holy grail for data centers running huge AI models.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit skeptical here.
Okay, light on me.
Is this actually a massive business reality right now, or is this just a heavily hyped science project? Because getting the biggest chip makers in the world to change their entire physical architecture from electrical silicon to shooting lasers through etched glass, that sounds incredibly risky, very expensive, and honestly really far off.
That is a completely natural point of skepticism. The semiconductor industry is deeply, deeply entrenched in silicon. However, the actions LPKF is taking, as documented in their 2025 report, suggest this is far beyond the realm of academic theory. They are treating LIE and their glass processing IP as a core asset that must be fiercely defended on a global scale.
Ah, right, the international patent battle.
Yeah. They aren't just presenting this tech at conventions, they are actively engaged in intense, high-stakes legal warfare to protect it. They recently went through extensive efforts to confirm their property rights in Europe and Korea, and even more notably, they are currently executing active legal measures against patent infringements in China. They have initiated proceedings to ensure that any products manufactured with imitation technologies cannot gain market access outside of China.
Wow, so they're playing hardball.
Totally. Companies do not dedicate millions of euros and immense legal resources to international battles over a theoretical science project. They fight like that over a technology that is on the absolute verge of becoming a lucrative, indispensable industry standard.
Okay, let's unpack this financial side, though, because, wait, this is where the math stops making sense to me.
Okay.
If we zoom out, it sounds like LPKF holds the ultimate golden ticket for the AI boom. They hold the patented machinery everyone desperately needs to build the next generation of computing. But tech revolutions don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a very messy global economy. And looking at their 2025 financials, man, it is a turbulent story.
It is a stark reminder that holding a foundational patent for tomorrow's technology does not grant you immunity from today's macroeconomic forces. The transition to a new standard takes years of scaling, and the company has to somehow survive the valley of waiting.
Yeah, let me lay out the hard numbers for you because they are jarring given everything we just discussed. In 2025, LPKF's total revenue actually dropped 6.2%, down to 115.3 million euros.
Yeah, a real dip.
Their adjusted EBIT earnings before interest and taxes was a meager 0.8 million euros. That effectively results in a 0% profit margin. And worst of all, their incoming orders dropped by nearly 20%.
Oof.
Right? How can a company with a monopoly-like grip on breakthrough tech for a booming AI market be sitting at a 0% profit margin with shrinking orders?
To understand that paradox, we have to look at the broader context of how a mid-sized engineering firm operates. LPKF is a diversified company. They don't just build machines for semiconductors, they have historical business areas in other industries. And right now, those legacy divisions are bleeding heavily.
Right, specifically their solar division and their welding division.
Let's examine the solar sector first. It has completely stalled. The entire global solar industry is currently holding its breath, anticipating a fundamental shift in materials, specifically the transition to a new perovskite coating for solar modules.
And perovskite is a radically different crystalline material. It's much cheaper to produce and drastically more efficient at absorbing sunlight than the standard silicon panels we use today.
Exactly. It's an absolute game changer for green energy. But because everyone knows it's coming, customers are actively delaying their investments.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. No one wants to buy expensive, older generation manufacturing machines from LPKF if the new perovskite standard is right around the corner. The investment framework is just frozen.
And then you have their welding segment, which specializes in high-precision plastic welding. That division is inextricably tied to the automotive industry.
Yeah, and even though LPKF is trying to pivot those welding systems toward consumer electronics and smart robotics, the persistent sluggishness and lack of recovery in the global auto market is just dragging their numbers down.
And then you pile the geopolitical chaos on top of that. The CEO's letter to the shareholders explicitly points out things like U.S. tariffs, creeping global protectionism, and a major U.S. government shutdown that happened in late 2025.
Yeah, according to the report, that shutdown had a heavily negative impact on their crucial fourth quarter.
Exactly. I mean, we are just imparting what's in the report here, but it illustrates that when you have fragile supply chains, the threat of trade wars and political gridlock, massive corporations just stop spending. They delay their capital expenditures.
Which brings us to their drastic solution, because to survive this brutal valley between their bleeding legacy divisions and the incoming tsunami of the glass substrate boom slated for 2026 and 2027, the leadership CEO, Dr. Klaus Fiedler, and CFO Peter Mummler launched a massive restructuring plan. They named it the North Star Project.
The North Star.
Yeah.
It certainly sounds like they're trying to navigate out of a very dark set of woods.
It is an aggressive, deeply painful structural adjustment program aimed at slashing their cost base and stripping away organizational complexity. For instance, they are actively consolidating operations, bundling their production by moving a major facility from Firth over to Sewell under a new service agreement.
And they are shedding anything that isn't absolutely essential to survival. The report mentions they're actively looking to sell off an entire biotechnology unit they developed, a single-cell analysis product called ARLIZE.
Right. They frankly admitted that the barriers to entry in the biotech sector were just too substantial for them to fund right now.
So what is the ultimate financial target of all this austerity? Like, what are they aiming for?
The North Star program is designed to violently rebuild their financial reserves so they can continue to fund the immense research and development needed for their semiconductor glass technology. Their specific target is to claw their way to a double-digit EBIT margin by 2028. They have even gone to their banks to redraft their syndicated loan agreements, securing financing up to 2028, just to ensure this transformation has the runway it needs.
Which means they really just need to hunker down in the trenches and survive the next 2 years.
Pretty much.
But, to execute a massive internal restructuring like North Star while waiting for the AMD and Apple Glass mass production orders to hit, you need incredibly steady, pragmatic leadership. How is LPKF governing itself through this storm?
Well, the timing of this existential restructuring is quite poetic. 2026 is actually LPKF's 50th anniversary. They were founded way back in 1976 by a 41-year-old civil engineer in Hanover who simply wanted to build a mechanical device for manufacturing printed circuit board prototypes, a PCB copy milling machine.
From milling standard circuit boards in a garage half a century ago to shooting precision lasers through glass to build optical highways for artificial intelligence, that is an incredible corporate evolution.
It really is. It shows a deep-seated DNA of adapting to and displacing established technologies. But today, the governance of the company is entirely consumed by this turnaround. The supervisory board, chaired by Alexis Siebert, has laid out very austere targets.
I read that in the report. They note that they hit their diversity targets with 40% women on the supervisory board.
Yeah.
But intriguingly, they explicitly kept the target for the management board at 0% women.
Yeah.
I saw that, and isolated on its own, it looks a bit anachronistic for a modern European tech company in 2026. But they outline a very ruthless, pragmatic reason for it that ties directly into their survival strategy.
It is purely a matter of wartime austerity. The management board currently consists of only two people, the CEO, Fiedler, and the CFO, Mummler. Their service contracts are locked in until 2028.
Right.
The supervisory board stated that the singular overriding priority right now is retaining the specific institutional knowledge needed to execute the North Star project and survive the current crisis.
So they basically concluded it would be completely counterproductive to expand the size of the board and increase executive compensation just to meet a diversity quota.
Exactly, especially while they are actively cutting jobs, closing facilities, and streamlining the rest of the organization. They noted that if the board naturally expands in the future, the target will be updated. But for now, corporate survival is the only metric being measured.
If you're listening to this, you might be wondering, why should you care about the board composition and the specific austerity measures of a mid-sized German engineering firm?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, LPKF is a perfect microscopic view of the fragile global tech supply chain. The entire next-generation computing and AI revolution that dominates the flashy keynotes in Silicon Valley doesn't just spontaneously happen.
Oh, for sure.
It is entirely dependent on a hidden network of highly specialized mid-sized companies scattered around the world.
The trillion-dollar giants like Apple, NVIDIA, and AMD rely entirely on the complex tools made by companies like LPKF.
And those mid-sized companies are fighting tooth and nail to survive global tariffs, protectionism, and collapsing legacy industries. If LPKF doesn't successfully navigate their North Star restructuring, or if they are forced to slash their R&D budget too deeply to keep the lights on, the glass processing tools simply won't exist.
And if those tools don't exist, AMD and Apple physically cannot build the 2027 chips they are promising investors.
Exactly. The bottleneck is real.
So, what does this all mean? Let's recap. Miniaturization has hit the wall of quantum physics, and glass is officially replacing silicon as the foundational bedrock for advanced chip packaging.
Right, the new bedrock.
We are watching an industry-wide scramble to build 3D processing skyscrapers, with major players slated to hit mass production between 2026 and 2027. And the upstream equipment makers holding the critical patents, like LPKF with their laser-etching LID technology, are the crucial linchpins making it all possible.
But as their turbulent financials clearly show, holding the key to tomorrow's technology does not shield you from today's harsh realities. These linchpin companies are being forced into severe austerity programs to survive geopolitical tensions and economic headwinds, just hoping to stay afloat long enough to see the glass revolution fully materialize.
It really brings us back to the sheer scale of this physical transition. We've established that glass is the mandatory new foundation for these massive AI architectures. But here's a final thought for you to mull over. We've spent 50 years building an entire global infrastructure around flat, silicon-based foundries.
Yeah, billions of dollars of infrastructure.
Exactly. If every major data center, cloud provider, and tech giant on Earth aggressively shifts their architecture to highly specialized 3D glass substrates over the next 5 years, what happens to the billions of tons of legacy silicon infrastructure?
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of obsolete hardware.
Are we looking at the largest wave of industrial e-waste in human history just to fuel the AI boom? Or will the environmental cost of processing all this specialized microscopic glass become the next great bottleneck?
The shift from sand to glass solves our computing problem, but you're right, it might create an entirely new environmental equation we haven't even begun to calculate.
An entirely new problem for a new era of technology. Thanks for exploring the glass substrate battle with us. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.